Welcome to this episode of ACG's GrowthTV. I'm Katie Maloney, and I'm joined today by Bob Landis, founding partner of Origination at the Riverside Company. Bob is also the recipient of the Legend Award, part of ACG's Max Awards. Bob, thank you so much for joining me, and congratulations on the award.
Well, thank you, and pleasure to be here.
So you've probably heard there's some doom and gloom around the economy right now with rising rates, with inflation, talk of a recession, some banking drama. You've worked in origination at the Riverside Company going back to the early 2000s.
21
You've been
years.
Some previous rocky periods.
Sure.
How does the role and the origination activity now compare to previous rockier times?
Well, I think of that old saying, do you lament because a rose bush has thorns, or do you rejoice because a thorn bush bears roses? The glass can be half full or half empty, but having gone through 2008 and having gone through COVID, it was a pretty rocky time. In 2008, and we are a large firm with people and we do small deals, which means we have a huge overhead. So in 2008, it was pretty scary. You only have so much money to pay employees. You're not exiting companies. So you come up with creative solutions. We gave every one of our employees the option to leave our firm on sabbatical without pay for up to 2 years. 9 people took that option to do something they wish they had done, and they were already starting their careers. And that was a huge motivation for those that stayed and for those that left, and several came back, some didn't. And they were all good people, but you have to be creative in those times. In 2008 was terrible. You couldn't sell anything, so you didn't have the carry to pay people what they deserved. Not too many people were buying things, but we had a lot of portfolio companies. And even in bad times, add-ons reigned supreme. So we scoured and spent much of our time looking for smaller companies to do add-ons with, so that when the next turnaround came, we were prepared to sell companies. And if you're not constantly growing your companies during the downturn, you will be at such a disadvantage when the market turns to those that have prepared themselves for the next phase of growth, that you're going to be behind. And we saw so many people go bankrupt a year after the turnaround. So you have to be prepared. And COVID, same thing. We had Elite, a company that makes gymnastics clothes, got shut down in Pennsylvania because they shut everything down. But if you're making masks, they'll let you run. So we converted all of our machines to making masks and all types of healthcare items during the COVID period, and we didn't have to let any employees go. We had a company in Europe called E.E. Shearer that blended rums, and the government said there's no need for that. Oh no, we're going to make hand sanitizers. So I'm not as worried about this. Well, we're prepared, but I'm not as worried if this is a major or a minor, but nothing compares to what we went through, and we'll weather it through. We will batten down the hatches. We'll spend less on CapEx unless we absolutely need it. We will avoid trying to lay off people. That's our last resort, and you try to weather through it. And who knows? Maybe the turnaround will be very quick. I mean, we're seeing people being laid off now, but it's not the mass that happened in 2008.
And you're credited really as a pioneer of the private equity business development role. So I'm curious whether you think the qualities and the skills needed to do that job effectively, have those stayed pretty constant over time, or does that look quite different now from when you started out?
Well, the world of business, if you're constant, you're moving backwards. Because in that presentation today, I said when I went in, there was about 200 PE firms. Now there's 4,500 of my nearest and dearest brothers, and about 14,000 if you talk about the hedge funds, the independent sponsors, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't afford to be what you were in 2002. I thought I was great, but I have improved so much in terms of understanding of the market, and so have the rest of my competitors. We have systems in place to improve. We have databases. We track every deal that we didn't work on, or we didn't buy, we didn't pass on. So maybe in 6 months we'll come back and look at it again. So the skill set, I'll have to say, my skill set when I joined, I worked on Fortran, and I had to teach myself Excel and all the things that all these people have in college. They're going to be years ahead of me in PowerPoint. But the other skill set that is equally important is your ability to interact with the market. And you never learn anything by talking. And you have to dig out the information. You have to generate that confidence that as you heard in my speech, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. People see that over time, and they're willing to work with you. So that skill set never goes away. And you know, the younger generation will, did you talk to that person? Well, I sent them an email. Really? Why didn't you call them? That side of the business will never change. And I see that sometimes lost. There's some really sharp people in the younger generations, but so many of them tend to hunker down on their computers and they send emails to communicate. That's great if it's a friend, but if you don't know the person, they're going to hit delete.
So it sounds like a lot of the fundamentals will stay the same. What about the next evolution of the role, though? Like, do you see it evolving, and where do you see it going over the next decade or so?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my presentation today, we're one of the few firms that have created this circle of life. And by that time, circle of life, when you're in a private equity firm, you've got the business development people bringing in the deals, you have the investment professionals negotiating the deal to buy it and to run it, and then there's a time to exit it, and then you make the distributions to your limiteds and your employees, and then you go back to business development. What we have done that's a little bit unique is that we have combined the front end and the back end. So on the front end, our job is to talk to the investment banks, cover the world like Sherwin-Williams, and know everybody. So when there's a deal, we're bringing it in and we can then assess it. But towards the exit side, who do you choose? Obviously, our investment professionals will have been knocked on the door many times by investment banks, but we know pretty much who are the right people. There will be inviting everybody, but we also, something a little bit different, we negotiate the entire process. Our investment professionals may sell 1 or 2 companies every couple of years. We handle 15 negotiations every year, and we do it in a regimented process so that nothing slips through the cracks. Every investment bank feels that they are being treated equally and nothing's being hidden from them. So that process speeds things up, the negotiations on the engagement letter, 2 or 3 days as opposed to 2 or 3 weeks. Because we have a process of letting people know what's important to us, and they usually put it in their EL. If not, we understand there's some issues. We'll try to negotiate them. If not, we go on to somebody else. But we make it a very efficient process. And our investment professionals are always involved, but we'll handle the front end. And once we get the engagement letter signed, we turn it over to them. And they can continue to do their job with their existing portfolio companies.
So it sounds like part of the evolution is systematizing and speed.
And putting the front end people also at the back end and working with the investment professionals, so they have, their main job is to manage the companies. And somebody has to help them make certain the process on exit is all set up so it's just handed to them on a platter, and then they work with that investment bank, and hopefully we get a 6 times return. Not always, but try.
Great, well thank you so much for joining me on GrowthTV, Bob, and congratulations again on the award.
My pleasure, thank you.